This evening's speaker is Sara Bogard, and we've known each other for many years. And she comes to us she's a stalwart volunteer. She volunteers for many different organizations, and is mainly in marine conservation, is her area of specialty. And is also a citizen scientist who is really out there every week, walking in the wind and the rain and whatever, just incredibly dedicated to the work that she does. I think Sarah's been doing monitoring the harbor seals down near Point Arena at the Point Arena Lighthouse, and she'll talk more about that. But we were just chatting before, talking about that she moved to Point Arena when she was 7, or visited the coast and stayed in these little cabins very close to where she now lives, just close enough to where she could hear the sea lions barking offshore. And then years later, she lives in that same area and observes wildlife of the pinniped sort. But she comes from New York. She worked at the New York Aquarium and worked with dolphins and belugas. And that's an amazing trajectory. And anyway, I would say she continues to work just as hard as ever to bring us the joy of these animals that she so loves. So with all of that, I am going to turn it over to Sara Bogart. So thank you, Sara.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you so much, Sarah, all the people at Noyo, the staff, Trey, technical people for having me in this Zoom presentation tonight. For all of you out there in the audience, um, I am a lover of seals, and I just greatly appreciate opportunity to share what I see through my photographs and through some of the work I do boots on the ground. So I'm grateful for all of you who do that stewardship and that volunteer work, and those of you who are interested in wildlife and nature. So this presentation is entitled Seals Beside Us, and it is in particular focused on my surveys that are out at the Lighthouse, so the harbor seals and other inhabitants at the Point Arena Lighthouse. And this is a mother harbor seal and her pup. And before I begin today, I kind of wanted to talk a little bit about something that came to me last year. Was when I was camping, there was a pine sawyer beetle, and these are very large. They're about 7 inches long with their antennae, maybe even a little longer. They have these fierce mandibles. And I was with a group of women. We were camping out, sitting down, chatting. And I looked down at my neighbor's leg, and on her leg was this giant pine sawyer beetle taking up half of her thigh. And I thought to myself, well, if she sees this beetle, she might get very scared, and she might, react in some way and, possibly hurt the beetle and just be alarmed. So I thought to myself, I've got this. So I tapped her on the shoulder and I said, "You have a visitor." And she looked at me, and I gazed down at her thigh, and she followed my gaze. And then her body leaned way back and her eyes got bigger. And I said, "Don't worry, I've got this." And I turned around, as I usually do, with my big paper cup that I got from the table and a paper to capture the insect and gently put it somewhere off where it wouldn't be, in a bad situation. And as I turned around, another woman from across the circle had jumped up and either shooed or swooshed the animal off her friend's leg. And we stood locked in complete tension. Myself with my viewpoint of, I'm going to save this insect and rescue the friend, and her with, get this animal away. And 2 seconds of utter silence with the whole group took place before somebody said, "Oh, don't mind her. She's just from California." And everybody burst into laughter. The reason this story is interesting to me is because it makes me think about how we view other species, whether we think of them as maybe a pest, or as we go into nature, do we how willing are we to share space with all these different kinds of species? If it's a whale, is it, oh, wow, a whale? Or if it's a mosquito, maybe not so, oh, wow. So I thought about that, and I thought about how our experience, our cultural preconceptions affect the lens through which we see, and that it influences our willingness or unwillingness to share space with other species. Also, earlier that year in March, Indigenous leaders from Polynesia, New Zealand, Tahiti, Tonga, Hawaii, and the Cook Islands signed the He Waka Butanga Moana, a declaration for the ocean, recognizing whales as legal persons with inherent rights. And I thought of this as being the ultimate act of stewardship. To recognize a body of water or a different species as, you know, having equal rights so that we are all on the same playing field. And this is a little calf, Pacific bottlenose dolphin calf that was off of Manchester. It still has its fetal folds. So the work I do as a citizen scientist, I'm not a trained researcher or biologist, but I am boots on the ground. I do a lot of volunteer work, and I volunteer for the Greater Farallones National Marine Sanctuary Beach Watch program, survey several beaches and bluff tops. I also currently, right now, and since 2018, survey for the California Central Regional Harbor Seal Inventory and Monitoring Program. And I am a volunteer for the Marine Mammal Center, and I work during the pupping season as a harbor seal docent for the Sea Ranch. And I do ongoing surveys at the Point Arena Lighthouse, Stornetta public lands. So my work includes species identification, counting the number of each species. I hope many of you who are volunteers, you probably are very familiar with this work. I take GPS photographs, I measure and record dead animals, I fill out forms, protocols, and do data entry. And the equipment that I use, my very first and foremost, is my binoculars to see the animals at a great distance, my GPS camera, and in particular, my Sony CyberShot 2000, which has a 600 millimeter zoom lens. So I am nowhere near any of the animals in these photographs that you see. I'm at least 300 meters away, or a minimum of 100, 150 feet away from any of these animals. Otherwise, it would be a disturbance. For example, so I take the picture with my lens of these pelagic cormorants on the cliff, and then I blow it up on the computer for all of everyone to be able to see them clearly. I have a counter to count animals in big groups, backpack, bird ID books, measuring tape, centimeter stick, gloves and personal protection equipment, scissors, a pillowcase for gathering, sometimes an animal or sometimes just trash, oil collection jar, permits, data sheets, clipboard, pencils. And so some of the work I do for the Marine Mammal Center, in the upper left, there is a little harbor seal pup there getting a checkup. His name was Bogey from a while back. Our rescue truck, which is in Anchor Bay operations at the Gualala Vet Clinic, and in the upper right corner, an immature northern elephant seal, and in the lower right, an example of some of the ongoing training that we do either online or in the field, and those are harbor seals. So I do assessment and rescue for the Marine Mammal Center. And I don't know if you can see immediately the seal in this picture. Those of you who work for the Marine Mammal Center just probably have a chuckle right here. But this was at the Anchor Bay campground. And what I do is I coordinate with the Marine Mammal Center dispatch crew. I identify body condition and behavior. I send in photos of the animal. I follow safety protocols, gather a rescue team if is deemed necessary by the veterinary staff at the center, do a rescue, help transport the animal, and also community outreach. And this is This is a very large adult northern elephant seal who's parked himself in one of the campsites. And if I look at this picture, I can see that there's a big van, so that there's a camper that is right next to that elephant seal, which could be problematic if the elephant seal got cornered. And then as I took a picture from the other side, I can also see that this elephant seal is near an electrical outlet. Um, there is no way this animal would be rescued. It is way too heavy, probably over 1,000 pounds. And they don't stay on land for very long. They spend about 80% of their time at sea. So in a couple of weeks after he's molted, he'll be on his way. So it takes a team. And that's something that I learned over the years, how important a team is. So in the upper left corner is our Northern Reigns manager, Justin Hodges, along with Bob Figlock, who's also on the center staff. Lower left is our truck in action with a rescue. The Anchor Bay camp host with a sign posting, letting the public and people with dogs know that there's a marine mammal ahead. And then the work that we do up and down kind of awkward terrain. So that's why it takes so much to put the animals in a carrier, do it safely for the animals' sake and our sake, and get the animals off the beach to have help. We practice. I am the seal in the net in this picture. We do boarding. We work with tie downs. We work on being very quiet. And we really have to work as a team and really focus on the safety of the animal, the safety of the people, and do our very best when we see an animal that is down and out. So some of the animals that we rescue, the otariids, California sea lions, Steller sea lions. There's also occasionally a fur seal. Sara Grimes and I rescued our first, my first rescue of a Guadalupe fur seal was on Manchester Beach, named Zephyr. And in this picture, these chocolate colored animals are the California sea lions, and just behind them is a Steller sea lion. And the otariids, they have external ear flaps. They propel themselves through the water using their front flippers. And the California sea lions have that barking sound. Steller sea lions, a little bit more of a growling sound, so very different animals. The California sea lions have a sagittal crest, so you can recognize them that way. So just starting off with the Stellers, we would not typically ever get an adult Steller, an adult male Steller. They can be up to 12 feet long and weigh up to 2,500 pounds. So they're much too big an animal, but an immature or a juvenile, possibly a female, might be up for a rescue. And so in the upper left is an immature Steller sea lion, and down in the lower right is a male with his big mane. And the California sea lions, a little bit smaller. They're about 8 feet in length and 800 and up to 880 pounds. They are very what's called thigmotactic. In other words, they like to be in a big cuddle puddle. So they are lying on top of each other, staying close together, staying warm. They seem to love to be together in big groups. I also note if there's a brand on an animal, or I see a flipper tag frequently on the junction of the armpit on the fore flippers. And if I can get a hold of those numbers, I will report them to Sue Pemberton, who can then let the researchers know that this animal is alive, and I'll send a picture in, and then I get to know a little bit about the history of that animal, and the researchers who originally worked on a project for this animal get to know that their animal's healthy and alive. So in the lower left is an adult California sea lion and a young immature one. And then we have the phocids. So the phocids don't have external ear flaps. They have just this two tiny holes, the pinna right here on either side of their head. They move themselves through the water using their rear flippers. And these guys are amazing to watch. So I am quite captivated by them. The adults can be up to 6 feet long and they can weigh up to 300 pounds. And the males and females have very little sexual dimorphism. This is two males in the center there, and then a mother and pup in the upper right corner. We also have the northern elephant seals. This is another picture of that elephant seal that was leaning up against the wall, and they can be up to 18 feet long and weigh up to 6,000 pounds. They'll dive on an average of 1,000 feet and have been known to dive even deeper, greater than 5,000 feet. So they're well adapted for ocean pelagic life. The immature one is in the right corner, and in the upper right corner is a pup. Now, those pups are usually about 75 to 95 pounds at birth, and this pup was on Schooner Gulch Beach, State Beach. And again, Sara was with me on this particular rescue. He was kind of heavy, taking him up the long trail, and so we named him Chunky. And he was one of the first northern elephant seal pups that was rescued last year. And they're susceptible to maternal separation. The ocean and the tide and the storms and increased storm surge can wash the pups away and separate them from their moms, so they are not getting their best chance. So we always, do our best to reduce the fossil fuels, coal, oil, natural gas. That all helps uh, prevent the sea level rise or at least delay it. And that habitat for these seals is very important. These guys also are very unique in that they flip sand on their back. So if you're out there on the beaches and you see that, definitely a elephant seal. So Chunky, he was stranded on February 10th, and he weighed 67.5 kilograms at admittance to the center. He was diagnosed with maternal separation and malnutrition, but they did a lot with the fish milkshakes, feeding him, teaching him to forage a little bit. He got to bond with his pool mates and do a lot of enrichment activities. And he was finally released at Chimney Rock on May 8th. And he, at that time, weighed 76 kilograms, and he was fat and happy for a new life. Sometimes we work with different agencies, and this is an example of a juvenile sea lion that was on Highway 1. Sometimes these guys, they just get into a place that's not a safe place. And so we ended up working with the Sheriff's Department, the California Highway Patrol, and the state parks to help secure this animal, and the Marine Mammal Center to secure this animal. And he was in good shape, but he just was in the wrong place, a very unsafe place. And that does happen. Luckily, we got to experience releasing him at Manchester State Beach, a local beach nearby, and watch him gallop happily into the water. The Marine Mammal Center hotline, this is the number. You can go online, and maybe that can be put in the chat. It's really great to have this number in your phone. You never know when you're going to see a stranded live seal that might need a little bit of help. And there's hundreds of volunteers up and down the coast of California and in Hawaii that will come and assist with an animal that might need some support or attention from one of us. And this little harbor seal, you can kind of see there's also a little wound on the bottom right hip there. It doesn't appear to be a serious one. They have a very thick blubber layer. But again, if you have any concerns, that's a great number to call. And so what the Marine Mammal Center saw in 2024, as of September in 2024, were about 450 patients, 160 with domoic acid toxicity, and 19 cases of leptospirosis. And just a little bit about this is a lot of information, but basically, the domoic acid, you may have heard a little bit about it down south in the news. It's a neurotoxin naturally produced by some marine diatoms, Pseudonychia australis, during harmful algae blooms, and then it's transferred through the food web from plantivorous fish and shellfish, and concentrations of the toxin build as they move up the food chain. So it often affects the brain, and it can cause disorientation, neurological damage, seizures, and all sorts of things. And the females can pass the DA on to their fetuses and pups. Some of the symptoms might be lethargy, head bobbing, disorientation, and seizures. And the treatment they use at the center is an electrolyte solution to flush the toxins and medication to control the seizures. And if treatment succeeds and the seizures can be controlled and the animal can eat normally, some of their physical abilities can return to normal and they may be able to rehabilitate. So causes are possibly factors that possibly contribute to it are eutrophication of fertilizers, agricultural and urban runoff, aquaculture activity, coastal development, and increased exposure to water and food contaminated with domoic acid. So each year, on an average, the center rescues 100 California sea lions with DA. And just in comparison to 2024, where there were 160 DA patients, in 2023, there had been just 60 DA patients. So we'll see what the numbers come up with this year, later in the year. Leptospirosis is also another situation for the sea lions, a bacterial infection that affects the kidneys, and it can be lethal. It's spread through the urine and blood of infected animals, and this can survive for weeks and months in the water, soil, or sand. And the seals can't filter toxins or regulate their hydration. So some of the symptoms are severe dehydration, lethargy, and abdominal pain. The flippers can be folded over the abdomen, but it's not necessarily indicating that that animal has leptospirosis. But they typically will seek water to drink, whereby they normally hydrate through their food. So the treatment is subcutaneous fluids given to hydrate the animal, and antibiotics, ceftiofur. The causes are unknown, but UCLA collaborators believe that a combination of factors may be responsible, such as changes in herd immunity, sea surface temperatures, and sea lion migration patterns. So this often affects juvenile California sea lions in the fall, and large outbreaks typically occur every 3 to 5 years. The center rescues from 5 to 150 patients in a given year, and in 2024, there were 19 cases as of September of leptospirosis, and compared to 50 cases the previous year in 2023. Another thing that has obviously come up for all of us with the limitation of eggs and their poultry industry was this article from Tom Hines was about the catastrophic mortality of elephant seals in Argentina. And this was identified as an outbreak of avian influenza, and an investigation was done in collaboration with scientists from the Wildlife Conservation Society, Valeria Falabella, Giulietta Campagna, Victoria Zavarettieri, and Claudio Campagna. And the virus, identified as H5N1, the outbreak just basically came on quite suddenly. There was a 70% mortality rate in the pups born in 2023, and that was from some of the research led by UC Davis Wildlife Health Center. And then that mortality rate reached 96% by November 2023. And as I understand, there was about anywhere is between 17 to 20,000 elephant seals that died. And I think that what's important about all of this is that the research is ongoing. It's not just a one-time thing and it ends. And the other very important thing to me, it affected South American sea lions and fur seals along the Argentine Patagonia coastline, extending into Uruguay and southern Brazil, and migratory birds such as terns can and other species can take this virus and transport it thousands of miles into another direction. And so you might have a healthy population of animals, and suddenly something like this can happen. So the monitoring and the work that the volunteers do, I find, is very, very important to continue with the research, to continue understanding what's happening to all the species in the world. The same with us. So to the lighthouse where I survey, this is a cloud about to gobble up the lighthouse here. This is the area that I survey. And again, more teams. On the upper left is Jamie Hall. He is my mentor who got me started surveying the Point Arena Lighthouse, Stornetta Bluff, and has been helpful in many, many ways with all the work that I do. I have the U.S. Coast Guard because they also help the human population, Scott and Tree Mercer, who count the gray whales from the lighthouse, and they fill in a whole very important gap up and down the coast to see what they're seeing with the gray whales migrating south and north, and then also some fellow Beach Watch volunteers. This is Mark Hancock, our executive director, and at the top of the lighthouse, and then also Sherry Goforth-Eby, who is a very wonderful whale photographer, and she's been documenting gray whales and other whales along the coast, and especially out at the lighthouse. And we have storms up here, and I know that you get them up in Fort Bragg. So this was the second time this porta potty blew over in a season. The chairs and benches, very heavy, blew over. Some of the cliff eroded and just had to be refenced. The sinkhole, I've seen many animals like gray foxes with their kits in the sinkhole, burrowing owls. This continued to widen, and it's even bigger now. And the Padao River is open and flowing. They did some work on the restorative aspects of this river to help the salmon to spawn and fish to spawn up there. So it's very interesting now how the water flows and what is up and in the estuary there. And these are some of the marine mammals that I see or have seen over the years. I don't see them all in one year. So there are whales, there are dolphins, there are terrestrial mammals, there's domestic animals, and many, many others. And I still continue to see more. That's a gray whale there. And just about the kind of thing about taking pictures. Well, when I first saw this fox, I was just coming back from a haul out site, and in the middle of the road, right in front of me, this gray fox was sitting there, and we just immediately stopped motion and gazed at each other. And those are the kind of moments whereby that mind of counting or agenda of counting goes away, and I'm mesmerized by an animal. And I was looking for a while, and then I had that thought, oh, well, maybe I should take a picture. And I reached down to get my camera. So this is the picture I got. There's mule deer out there. There's smaller animals such as raccoons. So I always am reminded to drive very slowly on Lighthouse Road or any roads that are going in through parks or even at night or dusk. These little guys are going across the road. And there is Tassie, the lighthouse dog, and her human, and Arena Mina, the lighthouse cat. And they both, I think, have their own websites and their own books. Some of the bird species that I've seen out there are really numerous. This is over the years. But the ones in blue are ones that were new to me, seeing them out there at the lighthouse. And that was the Bonaparte gull, the Cassin's kingbird, and the harlequin duck this year. So some of the birds I see, this is the black oyster catcher and western gull. This was a really young gull chick, still had some of its downy feathers on it. So I thought that was sort of interesting. Glaucous wing gull, telling the gulls apart is one of the things that is always challenging. This is a herring gull, pale eye, little mottled head, and a light back. And here's that Bonaparte gull eating a morsel. And just to give you an idea of size reference, there's some California gulls above him and a Western gull over to the right. And I also see some shorebirds. So these are sanderlings that were all along the bridge of a rock one time. Usually I see them doing some needle nose work, foraging in the sand at the shoreline. But these guys were all tucked in. And we also have snowy plovers out at South Manchester. I think the high count this year has been 44. And as much as I can, these are an endangered species, and the parks is very careful with them. They build their nests out in the rack in an open area. So very important to keep dogs on leash. And I try to get pictures of the bands so we know where this animal came from where this animal was born, in fact, hatched. And some of the other birds, this is the double-crested cormorant with a yellow bill. The pelagic cormorant with the chicks, they nest all along the rocks there. So it's a wonderful time of year. They're just getting started right now, beginning to form their nests and sit on their eggs. And I also very much love the pigeon guillemot. They are wonderful. You can usually see their white patches out on the water. They have very red feet and a very high-pitched sort of alien sound. If you see a pair in the water they do some water displays with each other, the males and females. That's also very endearing. And some of these birds very much camouflage. Usually I can't see the black turnstones, but this one was on a white background. If they're on a black rock or seaweed, they're very invisible until they fly, and then you can see a very black and white wing. And these wandering tattlers that were out here one day, I got a picture of them, but in the side on the right, you might see the one with the wings flying, but if you can see the one that's just left of the seaweed, they're very hard to see. I could hear them before I saw them. So these are all things that I look at when I'm doing beach watch surveys and some of the other work. These are the red-breasted mergansers in breeding plumage, a female and a male. And I absolutely love the common loons, gorgeous breeding plumage. And I always am fascinated that their plumage changes into a completely different color depending on the season. This is a Brandt's cormorant, which appeared to be having a little conversation with this brown pelican, and then this brown pelican. And I've been seeing a few of the pelicans coming in lately, tucked in, resting, but not so many as of yet. So we'll see how their population does. This was a little bit of a lineup with a western gull on the right. And I also see many great blue heron. This looked like a painting to me. They are always very avid feeders. Typically, they are flying away from me if I'm anywhere. I'm not near them, but I am on the bluff with them, and they like to be on their own, in their own place, focusing on what they're interested in getting, be it a gopher or a fish. And this was just a picture that a friend, surveying partner caught when we were surveying Sea Lion Cove, just of it flying overhead. They're very majestic and beautiful. We have the land birds. This is just a western bluebird, very beautiful, bright blue, a male, bright blue head and back with an apricot breast. And this was one of the bushes out there that had about 30 or 40 American goldfinch on it one day. Again, when I see these things, I think that's very exciting to see them all come in big numbers. And we have many raptors. So this is one of the large hawks, the ferruginous hawk. And we had quite a few American kestrels this year. The osprey are always fun to watch because they always have something in their talons. They're carrying nesting material. They're carrying a fish. And this was sitting on the edge of the branch at the estuary. And we have bald eagles. Usually a pair of them are there. And I don't typically get exciting photographs of bald eagles, but there was one day when out of the blue, this bald eagle went hunting in the water. So he was looking over perhaps at a fish. I don't know what was in the water, but again, the intensity, those large talons, such an amazing bird. These kind of things really I'm in awe of. And this is an immature bald eagle being chased by a common raven. The common ravens don't want to have these raptors anywhere near their habitat or their territory. This is what that immature bald eagle looked like. He still has a mottled head, and he's sitting on the branch. And there are a lot of red-tailed hawks out there. The Cora chased them too, or the common ravens chased them too. And at the top of the gazebo, it's a very popular perch. This is a red-tailed hawk and a turkey vulture. And I love the turkey vultures. They are an amazing animal. I think they have a great sense of humor. Plus, they do such great work at taking care of the action of decomposition. They get great meals. This one is sometimes the domestic animals don't make it. They perhaps fall off into a ravine or something, and they wash up on the bluff. So this cow, these two just drying their wings. And the ravens are very fun to watch as well. They're typically bonded together out there. There's several pairs of ravens, and they groom each other. They're very endearing to each other. And I just happened at one point to capture this moment on a nest when this parent came in to feed. Yeah, I had little captions for this, but basically to feed the chicks. And this one was quite active, giant open mouth. And of course, this one got picked for this delicious morsel. And I was really glad to see that this was a really good parent and fed one of the other chicks as well. And all of those four chicks from the nest made it. Now, that harlequin duck totally surprised me. I had never seen one before, uh, and I didn't know what I was looking at when I first spotted this bird. It was gorgeous. I later learned this was an adult male in breeding plumage, and this was on the ocean side of the bluff. So again, a species I don't know a lot about, but want to learn more is very interesting. And then last year, there was the very famous crested caracara. This bird typically is not in this area. They are typically down towards Arizona, New Mexico, and in Mexico. But this bird had flown up here and was hanging out in the estuary and along the Stornetta Bluff, much to the delight of hundreds of birders. And they came from hundreds of miles around to watch this bird. He hung out with the turkey vultures. These are photographs by Ron Bolander. And I just absolutely love the toupee and the elegance of this bird. And while so many people and photographers were out there searching for the crested caracara one day, I was walking out towards the bluff and I ran into two gentlemen and they saw my camera and said, "Well, are you going out there to find that bird?" And I said, "Oh, no, I'm just looking for seals." And they looked at each other and they kind of had a little secret look to themselves and they said, "Oh, you'll find seals." And I wondered what they were talking about. But as I walked out on the bluff that day, I noticed this patch in the water and I looked at it. And, I think at first when I was pretty far away, I thought, that's odd. There's a lot of seaweed. But as I got closer, I started to realize this was not seaweed. And it absolutely took my breath away because I had never seen a raft of California sea lions this large. This was a moment where my survey stopped and my taking in nature began to be just in full presence of what was before me. So these sea lions, there were over 450 in this group. They were just gently swaying over the water. They were barking softly. They were moving out of the group and then coming back to the group. And I just wondered, oh my gosh, what would it be like to, be a sea lion in this huge raft? And what were these rafts for? They all seemed very peaceful, incredibly contented. Um, Again, it was just something that was mesmerizing to me. And I just felt it was a really rare and wonderful gift. And those are sometimes those moments that you get out when you step out into nature and you're just maybe not so full of agenda or other thoughts, but you're just taking it in and you see something rare like this. So then I wondered, how large do these rafts get? And I just thought they must truly be enjoying this gathering. So before I left, I had to leave because I had to keep going on my survey, but two broke away and just gave this complete experience. So the harbor seal monitoring program that I work for, this is Sara, the marine ecologist down at Point Reyes, and she counts many seals down there and puts together this group of hundreds of volunteers up and down the coast. This is an older map, so it's all the way down south from Pebble Beach on up now to the Point Arena Lighthouse. So this is an old map because the Point Arena Lighthouse isn't on there. And, probably in the future, Fort Bragg. Um, and it does take a team. So some of the survey sites that I survey, this is the Mendocino College Haulout survey site that I survey, the Point Arena Lighthouse Stornetta Bluff haulout sites, and what they look like from the bluff. So these are good locations, protected locations for these seals to haul out when the tides are low and they have time. I have to, for Devil's Punch Bowl haul outside, I have to climb to the top of the tower to count these animals. This is a typical example of a survey where I note what the day is like, the tide, the visibility, and the time I spend at each location, number of adults and immatures, live pups, and the subsite totals, also dead pups, red seals if I see them, predator wounds, and any disturbance sources. So all of that information. I also count the birds and I also note the brown pelicans or any pelicans that I see. We have a disturbance survey sheet. If I see any disturbance for the harbor seals. The pupping season generally is from March all the way through the end of July. I am counting for Sara. And so my work mostly involves the counting. And looking out there, it does take me some time. They're pelages with the white and dark spots on them, very blending in with the environment. So I can see some of the lighter seals, but I might not notice immediately the seal in the foreground there that's a little bit darker. Um, they look like rocks, and the rocks look like them. So it usually takes me a couple of runs through the binoculars, a couple of 2 or 3 counts to really get them all, especially when pups are there. I also need to note the age group. So if it's a pup or is it just an immature? And also I need to note, is it a red seal? Well, I looked at this seal for a moment and I went, well, it's kind of tinted in my mind, but actually, no, that is not a red seal. This is a red seal. So what happens, these are typically down in the Bay Area where there's the mineral iron oxide that gets into the hair follicle and creates a red hue, or it can be a partially red seal. And I don't see too many of them. Wounds are also really important to note. So sometimes they look horrific in a way. I don't know what's going on or how they got those wounds, but I do note them. And I'm always grateful to Sue Pemberton, who lets me know that as long as an organ hasn't been touched, the salt water acts as an anesthetic. These seals have a very thick blubber layer, a built-in mattress, in fact, and they can heal up from some of these very, I would say, gnarly looking wounds. Some of them, they might be shark bites. I usually ask Sue, what she thinks they might be. And on the right, I believe that this was a shark bite. Sue thought it was a shark bite in the right. And I think that this one center that's healed up might be that same animal from last year. So I'm always rewarded by that. This is counting and reporting the dead is really important. And Sarah Grimes, you do an amazing job. I'm so grateful that you are counting and the people south of Cook's Beach are noting the dead, because it's just important to know a population, what's happening to the population with reporting the dead. And this was a harbor seal that had a gash in it. There's a live harbor seal on the left. Later, this seal came to shore. I don't know the cause of death, and that's not for me to decipher, but I take the best pictures that I can. I send them to Sue, to Sara, and they can then do the work gathering level A data or whatever is needed to find out more about the animal and perhaps get an idea of what was the cause of death, or just anything that might be important. I wanted to also note again that the turkey vultures have an incredible anatomy for poking holes into the hides of seals and helping with the decomposition process. They have that clean head with no feathering. And this was that harbor seal the following week. Again, another dead I believe this was a California sea lion. So calling Sarah Grimes and getting that stranding, she's the stranding coordinator for the Noyo Center. So, from Anchor Bay all the way up to Fort Bragg and beyond, if you can get her number, maybe this one can also go in the chat and put it in your phone. If you are walking on the beach and you see, an animal that's dead, so important to know that what's happening with the population of these animals. And then if you are to the south of Anchor Bay and Sonoma counties, Sue Pemberton at California Academy of Sciences is a great number to call. And it really helps the whole science. So you can be a citizen scientist as well. The Pacific harbor seal population is this was from, I think, a 2015 survey of 30,958 determined from a NOAO aerial survey. And last year they did a new statewide aerial count of harbor seals. So I'm looking forward to seeing what were the results and what will be the results from that count. So these are just some facts from the Field Guide to Marine Mammals of the Pacific Coast. Basically, these are the harbor seals are the smallest of the phocids, the least pelagic pinnipeds, and they rest on shore every day. They're very wary of people and terrestrial predators, and they flush into the water easily. Tide level, time of day, season affect their presence on shore. This is a bottlenosing harbor seal. And they eat small schooling fish, crustaceans, cephalopods, and are opportunistic feeders. They mostly forage from dusk till dawn and rest during the day. And they haul out on rocky substrates at the mouth of estuaries and on some sandy beaches. Average haul out time is about 10 to 12 hours. It definitely depends on the tides, and storms can definitely affect their haul out time. And so, what do some of these disturbance behaviors look like? Well, this would be an example of a head alert, only there's nothing to be alerted really by, because this male was just a little bit concerned about these two youngsters in the pool. But head alert, flush, and full flush into the water are those things that we note. And so he just, went back down and relaxed and said, just you guys. Some of the data from 2022 to 2023 that Sara compiled gives you an idea of what are some of the counts. You can see Drake's Estero, if you look down there, has a pretty high count of harbor seals. And so actually it was last year that Sara reported a strong El Nino that usually means a lower pup count. And she noted that there was a higher mortality at some sites. And the Sea Ranch especially noted a lot of dead pups. And most sites, with the exception of San Francisco Bay and Mendocino County, have been below average in the past few years. So there's the possibility that this may be due to coyote predation, but that's not true for all sites. And this is one of the reasons, in part, that the NOAA did a statewide aerial survey this year. So it'll be very interesting to hear from Frankie Garrity when he does his presentation. I believe that's in the fall, to see what is happening with coyote predation and how that affects the whole ecosystem with the animals and how other animals benefit from that. There's a lot going on. So this was the Sea Ranch rookery counts. Some of the things that have shifted since I'm a docent there, 2018 to 2020, the pup count was fairly consistent. But then in 2021 through 2024, the numbers decreased. Now, that doesn't mean that there were less pups, but it does mean that they were not all at the tide pool beach rookery. So I also started noting the dead as of 2022 because there was some mortality. And so I think it's just very important to make note of all of these things and to see what is happening. Are the harbor seal counts really decreasing, or are they just spread out more along the range? At the Lighthouse in 2018 through 2020, that was a very consistent pup count and fairly consistent immature and adult count. Just one thing I do want to say is that the high count that I take is the high count on one given day, not a cumulative. So whatever the highest count for the season on one given day would be the high count. In 2021, the numbers went up because then I also included the Mendocino field station. So that has ranged between 32 pups to 46 pups, which was a little bit higher count. And then there was that big high count of 282 in 2023. So it'll be interesting to see what happens this year. So usually in March, April, the pregnant females come in. They're usually sexually mature from 3 to 7 years old, and gestation is 9 to 10 months with a delayed implantation of 1 to 2 months. This was a very pregnant female, and sometimes I see the pregnant females and I want to stay and maybe I'm going to see a birth. But quite often I wait for a long time and nothing happens. It's usually the next day or 2 days later that, she finally has her pup. And another important thing just for all of the public to realize is that these harbor seals and the pups, sometimes they are parked on the beach while mothers go out to forage. And when the public comes by, they see this animal, this small baby. This is a Lanugo harbor seal pup with a fur on the outside. Um, and they think it's abandoned. And so it's very important to not go near that pup and not touch that pup, but to think about calling the Marine Mammal Center, because they can get volunteers to come and assess that pup, have the vet team assess that pup if there's an issue, and if the mother is not there, and we can put the animal on watch and have a whole team to help that animal. So it's so important to just know that you can reach out to the Marine Mammal Center, and there's volunteers that will come out and do all of this work, and to take great photographs from at least 50 to 100 feet back. And the most important thing, because maternal separation really is a very, we don't want to do that. And just to remember that we are not their mothers. So the nursery, the harbor seal pups can weigh from 15 to 25 pounds at birth. These are a lot of mother pup pairs that I get to see. And this is where all the fun begins. I'm mesmerized by this time of year. This is a very newborn pup with the fetal folds still there, you can see, and also the umbilical cord. This will dry up in a couple of weeks, but it gives you an idea that this is a very young pup. And I love to watch how they are together. So the pups frequently have similar expressions when they're hanging out with their mother. This one's awake, the mom is dozing. These two are both kind of sleepy, dozing. And this one is a situation where it's a kind of a head alert because the mother is looking at me. So I have to, when that happens, get out of sight from her, walk back on the bluff and wait for her to settle back down, or just leave the site and, let her be at peace. In the water, they have a lot of social behaviors and a lot of activity going on in the first 30 days. So the pups can swim at birth and they can dive for up to 2 minutes when they're only 2 to 3 days old. And another interesting fact is that they can swim over 100 miles from their natal area. I've heard even up to 200 miles in some cases, rare cases. So they're all over. There's a lot of contact with mother and pups. They'll take piggyback rides. Sara, I think you got to see a piggyback ride today. Very fun. The little guys might get tired or just enjoy a piggyback ride. And it also helps them to stay close to their mom in the open water. And they'll follow their moms on shore. Sometimes once they are resting on shore, the pups will get hot and then the moms follow the pups back into the water. And there is a lot of touch and a lot of smell. And I wrote the word cuddling. That's just a human reference, but there is something that sort of transcends that somatic element for us between species. So they use that scent. The mother will recognize the scent of her pup, and she's got that in her. And so same for the pup. They'll make contact. And also, the mothers will use their bodies to protect their pups from floating back out into the water. So there's a sense of protecting their pup, making sure their pup is doing really, really well. And I love this picture just because the mother, I don't really know. You can put your own words in for how that mother might be possibly thinking or feeling. But it is a very mom moment. On land, there's a lot of contact as well with the rear flippers. And then there's the nursing. So they nurse at 30 days on average, lots and lots of nursing. And this is a really good mother. There's a lot of fat, nutrient-rich milk that the pup is going to get very fat in that first 30 days to help when it's time for weaning. And they also have to learn some other skills, such as climbing up the rock. So I've watched them, and sometimes the mothers climb up the rock and the pup can't quite make it. And I've seen the pups use the water like an elevator to lift them up as the tide comes in to set them up on the rocks, which is an important thing to learn. And they have to be fairly swift. There's tides coming in. And this was a case of a pup wanting its mother and climbing all the way up, and then it was not the right mother and it was chased away. It may have been one that had been recently weaned. But it's these moments that I really, really treasure. So this pup was climbing up a fairly steep uh, incline on this substrate. And when it got to the top, I watched the mother take that foreflipper and just put it softly on her pup's, well, I say softly, but on her pup's back. And this was another example of a pup that was just fidgeting, fidgeting, fidgeting. And the mother kept tapping the pup with her foreflipper. And then finally the pup settled. And so I really thought that is just very a common thread between what we experience as parents. So, what we all need healthy habitat to live in. We need to be free of toxins and pollution, and we need to be free to move, forage, communicate, and come together safely. And I know that there are obstacles and the need for climate adjustments. There's the sea level rise happening, storm surge, and increased duration, and then the increase of ocean and land temperatures. And all these affect habitat loss for both human and marine mammal species. So I wonder, how will we do this? And I think that everyone is really thinking about this. It takes courage and fortitude, but in whatever way, in whatever form, this is an opening for all of us to come together to be great stewards and to do the very best that we can. So I leave you with these pictures that I saw also out there, which again touched me quite a bit. And this was a harbor seal mother with her dead pup. And I remembered that in 2018, an orca mother, Tahlequah, carried her dead calf for 14 days. And this mother was such a good mother. She was trying to help her pup out of the water. And she stayed with her pup for about a week or more. And I just thought to myself, looking at all of this, sometimes there are no words. So I thank everyone, all the organizations, the Noyo Center for your vision and for the things that you have coming down in increasing public education and communication with the public, the science, helping all the stewardship work you do in all of these organizations. It's wonderful if you can donate. And I leave with just thanking all of the species and the inhabitants of the Point Arena Lighthouse and Stornetta Public Lands who tell their very special story and live beside me. Thank you.
Wow, Sarah, that was fantastic. How touching and moving and beautiful that you can tell that story. What a gift you are. And I wanted to remind folks, if you want to, let's see, there's 26 of us still here. I saw people extend gratitude to you, Sarah, and few people had to pop off, but big gratitude for your talk. Your person, Martina Young. Thank you so much, Sarah. Marvelous and beautiful presentation. Thank you for sharing from Jerry West. I think, let's see, what else have we got here? So if you have questions, feel free to put them in the chat at this point. I'm happy to read them. Thank you, Vivian, for your gratitude, and thank you for your donation. Greatly appreciated. Excellent, Sue Atabani. Thank you. Sue Atabani is one of our responders down at Irish Beach. So she's sort of right in the middle of the FBO, the Fort Bragg operations of rescue, and the ABO. So often we come together to rescue or respond to things. And what else do we have here? Thank you for sharing. Thank you, thank you, thank you. How many pups will a harbor seal have in a lifetime? That's a great question. If I were to, do you know the answer to that off the top of your head, Sarah?
I do not know the answer to that off the top of my head. I know that the Marine Mammal Center might know the answer to that, and you might know the answer to that.
Yeah, if you go to the NOAA page is often a really good reference, or the Marine Mammal Center. they live, I'm just forgetting how long they live. Yeah, I'm not, rather than guessing, I'm gonna hold off because that would be a good one to go to the Marine Mammal Center's website, or to the NOAA website. It would have to do with their age that they do live, but they do have a pup pretty much every year once they reach that pupping age, and then they will continue to have pups every year, a single pup every year, until they age out. We had a adult, quite old female that stranded right near the rookery in Fort Bragg that she was shark bitten and she was deceased, and we collected her and articulated her. So I always kind of refer to her as a matriarch. Her teeth were worn and she looked to have been a kind of, we didn't age her, but she looked like, to me, she looked like a matriarch and maybe a grandmother of many of the seals that are out there at the rookery. Um, and let's see, do seal whiskers grow back if they break off?
Oh, that's a really good question.
Ooh, what inspired you to ask that question, Susan? Um, I've seen broken whiskers. I've definitely seen, when I'm responding to deceased ones, we collect whiskers. So I've seen broken ones. I would imagine that, the whiskers or vibrace vibration, those whiskers are helping them see and find prey in the depths. So they're hunting in the dark and they have those huge eyes, but the whiskers are picking up vibration of animals moving and tucking in behind rocks and whatnot. So whiskers are really, really important to a seal, to any seal. Thanks again for this presentation. Red-headed seals, since the iron oxide is in the hair follicles, making it red after molting, will the fur still remain red? That's a great question as well. And it will not actually, or no, wait, what is that? Do you remember, Sarah? They molt out of the red. So I've actually seen like a red-headed but white bodied. So it's molted off the body, but not the head. And then, but it's systematic. It's not like something you could wash off. It's actually in their system. So then the molt will get rid of that. And those varying stages. I think we had a red head at Fort Bragg it was a few years ago. But if you ever see them, great to report. You can always just even call the Marine Mammal Center, or call me to get out and take a picture, or call Sara, whatever. Super cool. Did I miss any questions here? If you like to, since there's so few of us, you're welcome to chime in. Trey has put in the chat our donate route there, and I have a few slides if you want to hang in there for another minute or two. Just sort of an update from the rookery here in Fort Bragg. But before we move on, here we go. One moment, please. I think I've got to share my screen, or Trey has to make me co-host or something like that. Something. Chime in if you have any questions. Feel free to speak out loud while we switch to my screen. Let's see. Can find it. It's not
So
that.
I have a question from one of the visitors that come to the Tide Pool Rookery at Sea Ranch. And we were talking about the female's birth process, and she was asking about how many pups they have. And she wanted to know if the females go through menopause when they get older, and have no idea.
Ooh, that
Well, I know the cetaceans go through menopause. I really, that's again a super good question. And I'm kind of thinking, I know I'm not supposed to guess, but I kind of think, I don't know, I better not guess.
I mean, there's definitely research on the cetaceans going through menopause, and mammals. I mean, do our cats, do our dogs, they are mammals. What happens? How does it present? Great question. I think that sounds like a science talk, actually.
Okay.
But yeah, interesting, just looking at that. I mean, the estrogen, it wouldn't be that difficult to really look. And maybe somebody who's listening, like Teresa, could chime in. There are many people here that know a lot, that feel free to chime in. I'm just sort of speaking anecdotally about them being mammals and cycling through
Mhm.
what they do cycle through. You can really tell when an animal is aged by the look, like the sunken eyes and the different transition as they start to look aged. And is that a part of lack of estrogen in them, like it is in me?
Right,
I don't know. I'm seeing if I can find my slides, and so far I'm not finding them. Any other questions while we're here? Okay, let me see. To find it. Ah, that's what I have to do. I get a little bit smaller so I can find my presentation. Is I've lost it in the, oh, I see it there. Sorry.
Sarah, have you seen how are the kelp beds out where you are?
The kelp beds are, well, it's early spring, so we're actually not not seeing a lot of kelp growth just yet this season. So I think that over the last year, we did start to see some better. Uh-oh. Oops. Are you all still there? Are you seeing my screen? Because now I can't see you.
Yes. We see you.
You.
You see me, not my screen.
Do I
Oh,
have to unshare?
I do not know.
That's a great question.
I am seeing just my screen. There it is. There. Sorry, folks. I always do this. Sarah was nervous about it, and now she didn't need to be because um
Mm.
let's see. Share.
Oh, Teresa Mercer. Uh-oh.
Are you seeing my
Yes.
screen now?
Yeah.
Okay, great. And I just need to get to present mode. Now?
Yep.
Great, great. So the kelp forest, we'll see it through the spring and summer because it's that annual growth. And last year, a number of locations looked a little bit more robust than the year before, maybe creeping up in, but we had a lot of upwelling and nice cold ocean conditions, lots of wind, and things felt a little bit more right than they had in previous years, like 2013, 14, when we had the warming and the kelp did not like that, and then the urchins and all of that. It's still definitely an issue, but I would like to just remain tiny bit hopeful that the kelp forest looked a little bit better this past in 2024 than it did in 2023 than it did in 2022. But that's I am very, very localized in my views. My beach surveyors do get out there twice a month and they do kelp counts, which is again like a citizen science thing, because we got the warming in 2013, 14, we didn't really know that we were losing the kelp forest and still they were gone. And it was like the ab divers that said there's a real problem out there, and then all of a sudden they were gone, and there wasn't a lot of data prior to that in terms of how big the kelp forests were. So my surveyors do a beach cast count of kelp heads, which is long and involved, but we are documenting all of it and keeping track of it. So this is the rookery that is in Fort Bragg. Of course, where Sara counts her seals, you can see they're hauled out and they have pups all along that Point Arena area and the Stornetta lands. So harbor seals have their pups. Maybe they'll be just two pair, one or two seals, and they'll have their pups off of Spring Ranch, or they'll be in the, excuse me, these larger groups and be a rookery, so to speak. So this is the Fort Bragg one. North of it, there's two. There's Laguna Point, and then there's this rookery north of Lake Cleone. And it's an area that I've watched for probably over 20 years. And it used to be that we would have 120 or so harbor seals on the sand. And that has changed now to where most of those animals are offshore and on the rocks here. It's a wildflower extravaganza right now. State Parks actually puts up a little rope line for people to stay back from where the harbor seals are having their pups. And so this was just a couple days ago. This is our rookery, and you can see we've got South Rock, Middle Rock, and North Rock. And then we have this onshore rock and this onshore rock. So they'll have them all along on these rocks. They used to have them right here in the sandy area and over here. And like I said, it would be, 100 animals or 80 animals, a lot of animals on the sand. And I started documenting deceased marine mammals in 2014 for California Academy of Sciences under a NOAA permit. That is, again, this stranding coordinator job to keep in track of deceased marine mammals. And I started to notice a pattern here that there were these pups showing up, deceased harbor seal pups that were brought all the way up here to the ice plant below the cliff. And it was just this very consistent sort of thing that was happening. That was disturbing. And I said, is it a bald eagle? Is it a bear? Is it a domestic dog? Is it an aggressive male harbor seal? Who knows? But, and then 3 years ago, we had a graduate student come here and actually put cameras in. And so he did document the coyote predation happening at this rookery. It does happen along the coast from Point Reyes on up, but it has to be an area where the coyote can actually access where the harbor seals are. So other places where they're offshore, they're not going to be able to get them because they're not, as of yet, swimming out to those rookeries. But here's the drag marks. Here's the classic presentation on the ice plant. And this is where Frankie has his cameras. And the turkey vultures will scavenge and turn it inside out. And so to document it, I've got to turn it right side out and get the sex and the standard length and all of that for reporting it. Here's a coyote, just a great picture. That is not from the rookery. That's actually from behind my house here near Van Dam State Park, up in the redwood forest. This guy scared away my little bobcat and took his chicken. So this was just a few nights ago, kind of surprise. And I had to share a few beautiful pictures of harbor seals just
Oh, look at this
because.
vibrissae.
And this one right here with the vibrissae or the whiskers is actually a photograph by Jeff Jacobson, and I absolutely love it because the sun is just so hitting those whiskers and highlighting harbor seal vibrissae. And it's just a spectacular picture, one of my favorites. And a harbor seal following the boat. Else did I put? Just some current happenings. We have an elephant seal just north of the harbor seal rookery. This is maybe a 2-year-old, could be a 3-year-old, but I'm thinking 2-year-old. It's bigger than any of the adult harbor seals that you've seen in this slideshow. It's probably a 300-pound animal. And he's molting. He's been there for about a month. So that's current stuff that's happening. And then over here, we have our interns and Sara Sundberg, my technician, and Richard Millis. And this, you may have heard about the minke whale that stranded in San Francisco Bay that was euthanized. It kept stranding high. It wasn't doing good. We're processing that skull at the field station right now for California Academy of Sciences. So we made that long drive down the coast and took the skull from Sue Pemberton, and we're currently soaking it. Just field station happenings with the fabulous interns. And this is just a little tickle because we've started to get offshore with Noyo Pelagics, which is this wonderful collaboration of Noyo Center, Peter Pyle, the Kraken charter boat out of the Noyo Harbor, and the Mendocino Coast Audubon Society getting out on the water, out to the canyon north of Fort Bragg, where within 12 miles you're getting to this deep water canyon that drops off over thousands of feet. And we got out there the other day, and it was dense with black-footed albatross. They look like gulls, but those are actually albatross. And we saw Laysan albatross. We actually had a very rare sighting of a short-tailed albatross. And these trips, if you go to our website or go to Noyo Pelagics directly, you too can get out on the ocean and see what we've got. This trip, we saw gray whales on our way back in. We saw Rizzo's dolphins. So with all the dead stuff and all of that, we want to leave you with this exciting possibility. If you feel sad at all, this is what I do: is I go out and watch like the mom and pups pairs, or watch the birds, or even if you're depressed about politics, just get out and walk and you will feel good. And remember, you're in a good community and we are very lucky to live here. So like Sara said, take good care of it and take good care of yourselves.